When writing music specifically with the goal of licensing your music in film and television and other forms of media, it's important to be aware of how music is generally used within the context of the mediums music is licensed in. There is a really broad range of styles of music that is needed for a broad range of different projects and situations, so it's hard to always know in advance how or where your music might be used. But there are some general guidelines that, if you're aware of, will greatly increase your chances of your music being licensed. A common question I get is, how do you know what kind of music to write if you're not even aware of what potential projects or scenes your music is going to be used in? This is a really good question, actually, because if you're just getting started in the licensing business, chances are you're not going to be writing for any specific projects. And although it's certainly possible to write music for specific projects later on, once you're more established, chances are that if you've never licensed your music before, or if you don't have a lot of licensing experience, you're probably not going to be invited to pitch to a lot of very specific projects. It's a classic catch-22. How do you get a licensing experience if you don't have licensing experience? So, what can you do? Well, although in the beginning of your career, you're probably not going to be writing with specific projects in mind, you can write music that will have a better chance of being licensed in general by being aware of a few very general parameters in terms of the kind of music that is licensed frequently. Now, I'm not suggesting that you completely change your approach to how you write music. If any of these suggestions seem offensive or like you'd be completely selling your soul by implementing these changes, then maybe you should consider whether or not licensing is a really good fit for your career. I'm all for artists staying true to themselves and writing music they feel great about. But with that said, you need to be aware of how music is used and what kind of music is used in licensing mediums if your goal is to license your music. Sometimes by making just a few tweaks to your music, you can arrange your songs in a way that work perfectly for licensing opportunities. On the other hand, I sometimes listen to music that artists submit to me that is so obscure and so out there that I have no idea where it could be possibly licensed in my lifetime. Okay, so let's discuss some specific things to keep in mind when writing music with the end goal of licensing it. Again, these are general guidelines. There are always exceptions. Licensing is not an exact science, and there are a broad range of situations in which music is used. But there are certain themes that come up over and over. Okay, here are a few things to consider when writing for the medium of licensing. Be aware of how music is used. Like I said, you need to be aware of how and why music is used for licensing opportunities in the first place. Music that is licensed in TV shows, in films, and so on is used in a supportive role. The music is used to enhance the storyline or theme of whatever project it's being licensed for. This is almost always the case. I sometimes listen to music that is submitted to my music marketing company that is so out there that I wonder if the person sending it to me has ever listened to music used in television or watched films and really paid attention to music before. Pay attention to the music that you hear in the background of TV shows and films as you watch them. I mean, really pay attention. Think of it as market research. In any business, you need to be aware of the needs of the marketplace. Music licensing is no different. Certain shows have certain unique styles in terms of music that is used. Get a feel for what kinds of projects use what kind of music and what kind of music is used in general. If you have a decent idea of where your music fits in the grand scheme of things, you'll have a much easier time pitching it successfully. Write lyrics that work in a broad range of situations. For songs with vocals, make sure the lyrics are broad enough that they will work in a potentially broad range of situations. If your lyrics are about something too specific or too obscure, it will be harder to find a place for it. Again, your music should enhance and support the song, or the scene rather, it's being used in. So if your lyrics reference something very specific, for example, a specific city like LA or New York, or a specific person like Sarah or Jessica, then it's going to be harder to find a spot for it, unless the supervisor just happens to be looking for something that references a specific person or city, which of course does happen. But if you keep your lyrics more general, they will work more often and you'll increase the likelihood of your music being used. Anything involving relationships lyrically is a good bet since almost all stories involve relationships. And other themes come up over and over as well. Themes like overcoming adversity, loss or grief, moving on, and so on. Make sure your arrangements are TV and film friendly. And so what I mean by this is keep in mind that when music is licensed, it's rare that the entire song will be used. Licensing is a much different medium than radio where entire songs are played. In the context of licensing, you have a shorter time period to get your point across. Oftentimes, just short snippets of your music will be used, like 30 seconds or 60 seconds. This doesn't mean that you have to write 30-second or 60-second songs, although you could, and in fact, some production libraries look for these sorts of lengths. But in general, if you're a songwriter, this just means that your song should be concise or efficient and avoid long intros and long guitar solos, things like that. Don't take a long time to get to the chorus. Your song should develop fairly quickly. Strong hooks are also important because, again, you don't have a lot of time to draw the listener in. Keep things short and sweet, and your songs will be much more effective. Okay, so there are a few guidelines to consider when writing and pitching music. Chances are you already have music in your catalog that fits this criteria. If so, emphasize those songs as you're pitching your music, and if you're writing new music with the goal of licensing your songs, keep these guidelines in mind going forward. And make it a point to watch TV and study music that's being licensed. It's really hard to be successful in any business if you don't fully understand the needs of the people buying your product. I produced a series of videos and blog posts recently where I discuss specific examples of music and how it's used within the context of television. I'll link to those below this video for you to check out if you haven't already. Okay, that's it for now. I have a couple more new videos coming over the next couple weeks, and your comments and feedback are greatly appreciated.